Do you actually do what you say?
I prioritize everything else above something that I have wanted forever.
You don't need a new strategy. You just need to become the person who executes the strategy you already have. The work I'm avoiding, right? The magic I say I want, the business I want, how I want to be living and how I want to make the impact and all the things I keep saying I want. The magic is in the work I'm avoiding. But nobody else can make me do the work. I have to have the conversation of why am I not doing those things? And then when I talk about strategy, if you've been watching this or watching me on social media, I've changed my strategy probably, I don't even know how many times at this point. Literally, it was somebody who gave me feedback one time. It started as quotes, and then it started as pictures and quotes because somebody said that people like pictures more. Then I posted pictures of my dogs, and everybody liked it, but nobody liked my messages I was sharing. So then I started getting pictures. Then I started putting words on my pictures and having typos all the time. And then people were like, you should use this instead. Well, now the algorithm shows the pictures and the font. So don't do the pictures in the font. Do the font above the picture and a different thing. And then people were saying, well, now put the thing in the comment and don't do the. But there's a point where flexibility and how you do things, sometimes that can mask your commitment to staying true to the strategy, you know? So when I talk about all these things, some of it's business related, but it's also like, I'm a single guy. I've never been married. I don't have any kids. I've said I've wanted those things for a really long time. But I'm kind of at this chapter in my life where I'm having a real conversation. And sometimes it's a hard conversation because it's an ownership thing of, have I really been living a life and doing the things required? Have I been the person to actually be ready to be married and to have the kids and all, you know, wanting it is one thing, but actually having the hard conversation with yourself to say, if you want the things, you got to start doing the things. And I just had my sister, so I have two sisters and my mom, and one of my sisters called me out the other day and she said, you know, you keep living in places and you keep saying that there's a lot of when, and there's a lot of, you know, you're living in houses with the intention of somebody's going to move in with you at some point. But then you never say you want to live in that city forever. Like I didn't want to live in Columbia for the rest of my life, but I stayed there for 19 years. Right. So then now I'm at the lake, and I don't know that I mean, my whole family's in St. Louis. And so it's a matter of like, do I want to live at the lake for the rest of my life? And my sister asked me that, and I was like, you know, I don't know. And she was like, okay. She looked at me and she said, so do you want to get married? I was like, well, yeah. She's like, are you meeting people and doing all the things here? And I was like, well, so then that, right, creates a hard conversation with myself of, am I doing the things to say that I actually want, that actually will lead me to what I want to be doing? And then even when it comes to this business, I say I want to do all these things. And the thing we were talking about prior was, if somebody followed you around with a camera all day, or if you had to write down every single thing you're doing, is that actually reflecting the things you say you want? Because eventually it's cognitive dissonance. We talked to this a bunch. You say you want something, but then you do something different. You say you want to be in shape, but you never go for the walk. You say you want to be healthy, but then you don't eat the healthy foods. At some point, that hard conversation with yourself, not out of judgment and hate and shame and all the things, but like a hard conversation of, it's up to me. And the one thing that I've heard a lot of people say is the gut punch of, maybe it's you, that you said a couple episodes ago. People are like, gosh, maybe it is me. Yeah. Which now in this hard conversation is, maybe it's up to me. Like, there's empowerment in the maybe it's up to me. Maybe it's the hard conversation I needed to have with myself, whether it's a financial goal you have in your life, whether it's a relationship goal, whether it's a career goal. Like, you got to have the hard conversation to then start taking some of the steps, right? The work we're avoiding for the things that we say we want. So tell me about, does that resonate with you, some of the conversations you've had to have with yourself? Because obviously I could go on about 100 different examples of how that's shown up for me in my life.
Yeah. I mean, all of this stuff that we're talking about is conversations with ourselves. If you're not, again, comfortable talking to yourself, We mentioned this as a separate topic idea for another podcast eventually. Let us know if you would like to hear it.
Yeah.
The fact that no one really sits in silence with themselves anymore. This is a different example, but like if you can't go to the bathroom without getting on your phone, having, you can't even go to the bathroom alone at that point. That's a problem, and I'm guilty of just like everybody else is. I'm not saying this from a place of I have everything solved. And I think that's why people resonate with us talking about things like
we're working on
it. We're not talking about any of this, like any single episode as like, we've got this figured out. This is what you should do. These are conversations that happen all the time. Like the example I was talking about happened last week. There's conversations I have all the time with myself. Hopefully when you start, people say, when you start answering yourself, that's when you got a problem.
Yeah, but when you don't need anybody else for a conversation.
You gotta play both sides a little bit. Like think through scenarios this way or this way without overthinking to the point of paralyzation. Last time you were here, again, we talked about it, me starting YouTube. I was looking literally last night at all the videos I've made. I've been making YouTube specific videos for 8 full years. And I've made 3 separate YouTube channels. I've done it for a couple months, then I'll get busy or life gets in the way, then it falls off. Do it for a couple months, life gets busy, falls off. I prioritize everything else above something that I have wanted forever. Whether it comes true or not, I've wanted to do it and put an actual effort into it forever. But have I really wanted it? And that's what you kind of were like, hope is not a strategy. We talked about that a couple episodes back. Hope isn't the strategy anymore. I'm not like, I hope that I can make YouTube videos sometime. Now I'm planning it out. And it's scheduled out. And like, here's this day. I had another friend stop by the other day and we were talking about this, and it's someone who's sort of like in the beginning stage of his career in doing photo and video stuff. And I've helped sort of mentor him a little bit. And I learned a lot from his insights about that. And he said, every single piece of content you've ever put out about what to do with a camera that's shaping what I'm learning right now. And so if you put out more of that, you are helping me. Like, here's the face, here's who's tied to it. You're helping me if you do that. And like, it's one of my great friends. And I'm like, of course I want to help him. That's what I want to do with the content I want to make. So that's a hard conversation for me, is like, do I really want this? And if you really want what you say you want, then why are you not doing it? And so another part of what we've talked about lately is doing it. Like doing the thing, just doing. I feel like that could be a whole separate podcast or a book and all the things. The art of doing, it probably is a book. That's a whole thing. That could be said for this situation of having hard conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta, at some point you just gotta do it. At some point you gotta, whatever you want to do in life, at some point you gotta do it. The job is going to be there. You got to, at some point, do it. I know there's transition periods and you got to be smart about leaving your job to do something you like, you got to, but at some point it's going to come to the fact of either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And so far that has been the only aspect of my life. And this was a self-reflection after he told me that. That's the only thing in my life right now that I have said that I wanted to do and not done it and not proved it to myself that I would do it. And so I'm like, I kind of pride myself on being the person who says, for one, I'm ambitious and I say a lot of things, but then I do a lot of things also. That's the one thing. And I think it might be because it's one of the things I want the most, that I've built it up so much in my head that it's like, I don't want to let myself down at all.
Yeah.
And so I can't let that happen again where I start it and fall off. I don't want that to happen again. So I want to be fully prepared with plans in place to make sure that doesn't happen. But I could plan for the next, 30 years.
Yeah.
at some point I got to just do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, in the second book, so the first book I have is Practice Gratitude, Find Joy. And I treated it like it was an accident the whole time. And then obviously, a book gets published and things get made and people buy it and all the things. And so I'm still minimizing that. So then I was talking about, I want to write a second book about grateful leadership. And I talked about it and really talked about it and then thought about it and then kept talking about it, how I was going to do it. And then a really good friend of mine, gosh, it had probably been 7-8 months. A really good friend of mine, she said, so how's that book coming? She knew I hadn't started it. She said, are you ever going to write that book? Literally, I called the publisher. So Streamline is who I wrote my books with, my second book. Alex Demchek, Will Stevens, they're fantastic. Their team. I just had another meeting with them the other day. I called them immediately and said, there's a fire underneath me right now. Because I told them I want to write the book. They said, let us know when you're ready. Mm-hmm. So I had to have that conversation of, why haven't I written this book? But it's also a matter of like knowing that somebody else even cared enough to ask me about the book made me want to like prove them right. And so this is like all the growth stuff that I'm going through.
Yeah.
But when she said, are you actually going to write that book? It turned into, do you actually do what you say? Is all I heard.
Yep.
And I wanted her to know, yes. But the transition of having the hard conversation didn't stop then. This is the first time I'm really going to talk about this because I was thinking about telling those guys at some point, but the book's out and it is what it is. While I was writing that book, I'll never forget it. I was sitting there typing all the things, and I got pretty vulnerable in the first part of the book to kind of talk to some of my chapter stuff I've never said before, ever to anybody. I thought a book would be a first place. Nobody would find that out. So I was like, okay, working through that. But what I recognized was as I was talking about my journey, and then I started to get into how gratitude had kind of shifted my life, I got really uncomfortable. I got really vulnerable. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have a glass of wine while I write this book. So then I started to lean on, okay, well, I'm just, now I'm going to have a glass of wine every time I sit down to write the book. Now, I don't do my best thinking. I don't do my best anythinging when I'm having a glass of wine. But then I realized I wasn't addressing why it was hard for me. I was trying to numb and avoid why it was hard for me. And then the guys at Streamline said, who are you writing this book for? And I said, well, my friend that I care a lot about, she challenged me and said that. And she's like, no. Who are you writing it for? Like, I get that she lit the fire. Mm-hmm. And I said, somebody out there is going to benefit from this book, from reading it, from hearing my story, from leadership examples. And they pointed me to write it for that person. So when we talk about these podcasts, that conversation in 2022, 2021, it was really more 2022, really changed my life because I stopped making it about me. That's the tough conversation about why I was having such a hard time with it. But now every post, every podcast, every book, everything is for somebody else. But it's also affirming like my desire to give back and not make it about me. Mm-hmm. So even when I have some of these moments to where I'm like, maybe another book, maybe another talk, maybe another thing, and I start to slow down, I start to think, why am I slowing down? And the hard conversation is because I'm making it about me again. And a good friend of mine, Brian, I was talking to him about his business and how he's getting going with things as well. And so a different Brian. And he helped me through a conversation. I started to recognize that I was hoping somebody would see what I was doing and that would launch to a bigger scale. Talked about hope not being a strategy, right? And then also I recognized through conversation. So sometimes talking through hard things is what I'm getting at here with this point. Talking through the hard things can provide some clarity because then I realized I was actually doing more things with the business to get things from people, not intentionally. Instead of giving all that I had, I was getting I was focusing on getting money, getting payment, getting opportunity, getting exposure, getting something from them. That became where I was trying, because I was, trying to decide, should I go full time in coaching and speaking and books and podcasting and all that, or do I have what it takes to do that? But once I started to recognize that what I love the most about it is actually giving everything I have, because I'm becoming more and reading more and learning more. Once I understood that, as long as I stay focused in who I'm doing it for and that I'm doing it to give, that freed me up. Everything else became secondary. Instead of trying to figure out payment and how many speaking gigs do I need a month and all this other stuff, all that really means is, how much do I need to get from other people so I can live my life? Mm-hmm. And that is not who I am. And that's not why we do these episodes. Like, we're not doing these episodes. We're just trying to give to people and wherever they are in their chapter, right? And I've had some people say they've gone back to listen to old episodes and it hit them in a new way, because they've listened to the episodes over the last couple of years, but it's different. And so that's the stuff. When I talk about hard conversations, it's really personal accountability and this personal agency thing that we talk about. It's sometimes the hardest conversation you're going to have is the one you're avoiding. And the things that we're unwilling to say may be the most meaningful things we need to hear with ourselves and with the people. And again, obviously relationships and connection. If you're in a relationship, so like you and Mary, right? Hopefully me and somebody someday. So if you're in a relationship and you
Hope is not a strategy.
This is true. Yeah, that's another hard conversation. Right. So, but if you don't feel like you can say what you need to say when you need to say it, if you don't feel like you're in a psychologically safe relationship, if you don't feel like if you say something, then that person's going to get mad or it's going to make it worse. Like, the human connection that we thrive on is rooted in being willing and able to say all the things. Mm-hmm. So like, feeling safe isn't just about physical safety and human connection in relationships. So that's going to be my nudge for people, is if they feel like they're in a relationship where it's hard to bring up something that may upset the other person, first of all, it takes two to actually make that work. But be willing to think about why. Like, why is it hard and how do I want it to be? Because again, like we've talked about, choose your hard. It's hard not to be able to say anything to anybody and just kind of live a life in silence and not feel like you're heard and seen. But it's also really hard to address those things. Mm-hmm. But you know what you're going to get if you never say anything. But maybe like the theme of the episode, right? The life that you want is on the other side of being willing to have some of these hard conversations.
You said something earlier about the magic. I would change that to the life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
That just hit me whenever you were saying that. And I think another...
The life you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding, yeah.
Magic to me is just, like, I always think of like Harry Potter. Like, that's magical, it's fiction. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for magic, in my head specifically, it's just like you're looking for something that doesn't exist, because magic,
sure,
it's like hope.
Foolery.
Hope does exist, but hope isn't the real tangible thing. Mm-hmm. But your life is, So if you're looking for a life that you don't have, probably should do something about that.
Maybe it's in the work you're avoiding. Maybe it's in the conversation you're avoiding.
Another thing to consider when, like, just taking the route of having the conversations with other humans, is everybody is different. And you could have the same exact scenario with two different people, have the same conversation with two different people, and it's going to go two different ways.
Yeah.
But if you are always the same person, then both of those people could, if they have any expectations of the conversation, they should be the same. You take all the things you can control, all of the things, and you present yourself as authentic, and you are you in every scenario. That's one thing that's been pointed out to me from Mary, is like, if I'm here talking to you, if she was right there, this is the same conversation that I would have if she was here or not. Mm-hmm. Or, if my kids are here with us today, they're back there hanging out. If they were sitting right there, I would have the same conversation with you right here. Mm-hmm. I operate myself in that way. Like, I'm me and I'm comfortable being me now. I'm 33 years old. I'm now, over the last couple of years, confident and comfortable in who I am and the way that I think. And I know I've done the work. And that, just like with my career, I'm confident that I've done the work to be where I am and to get to the next level. Also, I'm confident that I've done that. It's just the finding the steps of how to get there. Yeah. With those relationships, I'm confident that I've done the work with myself, and there's always things that I'm improving on. You know, there's a situation happened over the last year where it made me reflect a lot on myself, and I was letting an outside person who shouldn't matter have an effect on me that I didn't want. And so I've done a lot of work over this last year, and that's not an issue now. Not saying that nothing will ever pop up again, but like,
we have a plan if it does.
There's always things that you need to address. And it's a constant, it's called a practice for a reason. Gratitude practice. You're always doing it. If you're in the medical field, it's a medical practice. You're always working on it. You're always practicing. We've talked about this before. If I'm not doing this, if I'm not recording things and editing things, I am practicing. And if I'm not doing that, I'm spending time with my family.
Yeah.
That's takes precedence. But, you know, like, I'm always doing it. So I'm confident that I'm always going to get better, because there's no way I can't. You know, I'm always willing to have the hard conversation. I'm always willing to be a friend. And so if you just approach your life like that, that's what we need more of. You know, we don't need more people to flip out whenever someone says anything to them. You know, there's plenty of people that do that. Don't be another one, you know. Address the things within yourself. And anybody watching this conversation at this point, especially, you're the people who are going to be doing this. So maybe we can give them a practical, you know, like, one takeaway from this or something. Yeah.
Well, and one thing before I give that takeaway, just because you said work a lot. You said that you've been doing some work on yourself. Sometimes the hard conversation is understanding that we haven't healed from something yet. And it doesn't mean from childhood. It could be the last person we were in a relationship with that did something to us that we're carrying to the next one, right? So, or the last time we had a hard conversation, you're triggered by another hard conversation. Heal from the things that you're still carrying, because typically when we're offended by something, it's because we haven't healed from something else that previously happened to us. Or when we're offended by something, it's because we're not sure who we are. So that's the get into you a little bit more, so that you can kind of be more available and more present instead of in the past, which is typically where offense and different things come from. Now, there are certain things that people say to me that do not go along with who I am and what I am. But my choice to do the work to know who I am determines whether or not I'm offended by that or whether or not I turn away from that. Two very different things. Offense is something that we always get to control. The other people's words, we don't. How they impact us, we always do. Yeah. And so when it comes to, again, the life we want is maybe in the work we're avoiding, or again, the theme, just high level, maybe a hard conversation with ourselves or with somebody else. Maybe our life that we want to be living, the days we want to be living, the emotional state we want to be living is just one conversation away. Two things. One, think about, are you being honest with yourself about the life you're living, and is it in alignment? Two, are you open? Have you set up with other people in your life, the people that mean the most to you? Have you set something up with them to where they feel safe to have the hard conversation with you? Because oftentimes whenever we have a conversation with people and we say the hard thing and they say, why didn't you come tell me sooner? Once we go first, somebody else will feel also just as safe. They'll feel safe because you came to them. They'll feel safe to come to you. Yeah. So go first. Ask the people in your life. Sometimes we want to feel like we can go to other people, but this really what we call the actions, right? Like, okay, what do I do about all this? Like, it all feels good and fine. But maybe you need to go first with somebody, maybe somebody that you really trust and somebody you're confident with and somebody that really means a lot to you, to say, if there's ever a hard conversation, I'm here, and here's how you can come to me. And is there something that I can be doing differently? Is there a different way I can show up for you? Like, really get into those spaces with the people that you love and you're the most grateful for, and just maybe you lead the example by being willing for somebody else to have the hard conversation, to create a relationship to where all the conversations feel meaningful and not hard.
Mm-hmm. I would say too, if I was to give a one key takeaway or whatever from this, is the thing that will allow you to be able to face hard conversations and approach them with confidence, that is to be a person who other people could approach to have a hard conversation, Yeah. Be who you say you are, and say you're someone who wants to be better.
Yeah.
And if you're always living your life as if you want to be better and practicing that, then no one should ever have a problem with approaching you with a hard conversation as well. So that's my advice.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate all the places that we go. We don't have a script. We just have energy and passion. But I know both of us speak from a place of wanting to make a difference in people's lives. And so I appreciate you spending time, effort, even with your family waiting on us. I appreciate you spending the time and effort to be on the show, and everything you do after the show's done to make it look great and be meaningful for the people that choose to listen and subscribe. So I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me on, and hopefully everyone's not tired of me yet.
Yeah.
We will have some other guests coming.
We do. We have more guests coming and more episodes coming soon.
Right.
So thank you for spending time and your energy, commitment, your heart to listening and watching these episodes. And, as we continue to work through these different topics, your comments, your feedback, I'm getting a lot of messages right now of people saying what they find valuable and what they want us to talk about. We have a bunch of great episodes coming with meaningful content that's going to hopefully resonate with each of you. And then we also have some incredible guests. So if you're interested in being on this podcast and adding this kind of value, please reach out. We're creating a calendar. Again, we have a bunch of really great people coming on soon, but we just know that every episode that we do is with you in mind, and it's for you. And I'll remind you, like I do with every episode, that you always have the power and the choice to reshape your mindset, live with intention, and look at the world through a grateful lens. Until the next episode, never stop.